Hey everybody, and welcome into a special edition of After the Movie. Normally I record my thoughts before and afterwards, but didn't get the chance to for this one, and I want to make it a little better quality this time. So yeah, I just saw Stephen King's It, the 2017 version. I'm here to give my thoughts on it. But before I get into that, I might as well discuss my love of the story in detail before I get into the new one. So yeah, I first heard about Stephen King's It years ago. And I was always curious about it, like the curiosity of like this killer clown. Well, not really a killer clown. It's some other entity. It comes from the Stephen King's like Macroverse, and his enemy is the Turtle of Turin, and all that other crazy stuff. Which the movie and the miniseries never really dived into too much. But it's basically this shape-shifting monster that takes on the form of your greatest fear. And I was always curious about it. So years and years went by, and it was like 7th or 8th grade. I finally one of my friends like, oh, let's watch the miniseries. So we started to watch it. So, like I said, I heard it was scary. We started watching. We were like, "What is going on here?" And like, it's not one of these like stupid flip discs. So you have to like flip the disc. So I didn't. We put in the second half at first. I'm like, "This isn't making any sense." My friend's like, "Yeah, I saw this movie years ago. It's why are we started here?" And then we were like, "Oh, it's a flip disc." So we watched it, and I really enjoyed the miniseries. I liked the stuff. The first half with the kids, I thought was really good, and the second half with the adults, I mean, I can tolerate it, but I don't think it's all that great. But the main thing that like drew me back to the miniseries was this guy right here, Pennywise, played by Tim Curry. Tim Curry is one of my favorite actors of all time. I just love Tim Curry and everything he's in. Like, he's always fun. He's always giving it his all. Whether it's a good performance or a bad performance, Tim Curry is a blast in everything he's in. One of my favorite actors, amazing. I love Tim Curry. And he's awesome in the miniseries as Pennywise. He is incredible. He is so much fun to watch. He's got the right balance of creepiness, and he's really funny. He comes across as like, you see him like how kids would be lured by him, and he's like, oh, this friendly clown, and then he just like, in an instant, he's like, done. And he's just an asshole, and he's just making fun and messing with people and just being annoying. He's just great. Tim Curry is incredible in the miniseries, and that's one of the reasons I feel like the book in that, it has remained like Stephen King's one of his most popular stories, because of Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise. And when the book came out, it was like the best-selling book of, I think it was 86. But yeah, it is, it's a good story. I really like Stephen King's It. It is a very long book. This fucking book is 1,100 pages, and it's solid. There's some things that I don't like in the book, but, you know, we can get into those nitpicks and that later on. But yeah, it is like one of those stories of Stephen King that I just keep going back to over and over again. It's the one, it's my favorite story, I should say, like, out of all his books. It's the one I'm most fascinated with. Just keep going back to it. I don't know what it is that draws me to it. Maybe it's the stuff with the kids. I think it's, really, I do think it's probably Pennywise himself, as who's one of the great villains. It's interesting, because, I mean, some elements of the book I like a lot, and then there's other elements I'm like, not so much. But, yeah, I'm a fan of it, as you can tell here. Got the book and that. Read this thing last year, again. But yeah, it is the Stephen King story I just keep coming back to. Anyways, you're probably curious to know what I think of the movie. That's why you clicked on this video. Overall, I thought the movie was great. It did a great. They did a smart thing this time and said, you know, we're gonna make 2 movies, because, like I said, this book is 1,100 pages. You can't do it justice with just one movie, unless it's like 6 hours long or something like that. This is a long fucking book. I mean, just look at this thing. It took me like, I don't know, like 40 plus hours to get through this thing. It's like, oh, it takes a while to read this thing. But yeah, I mean, it's a long book, so I'm glad they're going in the 2-part things. And they didn't film it as like a 2-part movie immediately. They filmed the stuff with the kids. They focused on that first thing, and then afterwards, after they see how they do, like, and they wrapped it up too. It's not like they left it on a cliffhanger ending or anything like that. They wrapped up their story, and then they left it open for a sequel, which is what they're going to get, so, like, It Chapter 2. I mean, spoiler alert here, people, but if you know the book and you know the story, you know that it comes back, like, 27 years later as adults. So, but yeah, well, I'll save the rest of the spoilers for spoiler-free portion. But yeah, overall, the movie, the 2017 one, I thought it was great. I thought all the child actors of the Losers Club members were fantastic. Like, this is some of the best group of, like, kid actors I've seen in years. The only one I recognized was Finn from Stranger Things, but the other child actors, by God, they're all great. This is the best group of like child actors I've seen in a movie. Like the movie that really nails child actors since The Sandlot, I'd say. I haven't seen like this large number of cast of kids. Like these kids are authentic. You know what I mean? Like The Sandlot, those kids felt authentic. I mean, these kids when their parents aren't around, they're swearing up a storm. They all have like bullies and stuff, but like it's great. It really captures that nostalgia and youthfulness that I felt as a kid. Like when my parents weren't around, I was swearing up a fucking storm. Actually, I swear up a storm regardless. But yeah, the child actors were all great. The Losers Club was cast perfectly. But the main thing that draws us to the movie is like I kind of knew going in. I figured that all the child actors would do a really good job. But the main thing that I was worried about was Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. I was like, he could be interesting. I didn't know what to think when he was cast because I wasn't really familiar with this actor. I'd seen his dad Stellan, and I'd seen Alexander in like Tarzan and stuff. But Bill, I had not seen him in anything. And they did when they released the first trailer. I'm like, they kind of kept him hidden, like the creepy clown. I was kind of worried. I was like, oh, is he just going to be the creepy clown? Because he has to kind of lure the children at first before strikes. That's kind of the appeal, and we do get that in the Georgie scene at the beginning of the movie, but eventually then they had like that sneak peek of it like in front of like Annabelle Creation, which I saw, and at first I was kind of laughing a bit because I'm like, he sounds kind of like Scooby-Doo, and I was like, I'm kind of put off a bit. But as I watched it more and more, and as the more of the movie went on, by the end of it I'm like, okay, Skarsgård's really good as Pennywise. He did a great job. I was very pleased with it. Personally, I mean, it's tough to top Tim Curry. Let's be real here. Tim Curry is so good in the miniseries, but Skarsgård does his own take, and he definitely, like, the thing with Curry's was you felt like that was a guy, like, as a clown. With Skarsgård, it's like, it's not, you don't get that feeling that it's a clown. You get it that it's something impersonating a clown. You know what I mean? And, like, some of the way he contorts his body, like, he has, like, all these different voices. You get the feeling that this is an entity. Whereas Curry, I felt like that was just kind of a guy in a clown outfit, which both are great performances, but they're very different too. Personally, I still like Curry's a bit more, but then again, I've had years and years of Curry's performance, and like Skarsgård, he wasn't allowed to be let loose enough, I felt, in this movie, except for a few scenes. So he wasn't in the movie enough for me, but I would like, hopefully the sequel, we get a lot more Pennywise. But yeah, I thought the movie was great. The way it's faithful, and then like it updates a lot of things from the book. For instance, in the book, it's set in the late 1950s, and then it comes back to like modern time, which is like the 1980s of Derry. At the time it was published, but with the movie, it's like 1988 is when the movie starts, and it goes to 1989, and you can see all the cool stuff. Like you can see like on the movie theater in the background, they're playing Lethal Weapon 2, and one of my favorite movies of all time, Batman 1989. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to go see that in the theaters. But yeah, like you get the sense of the small town. You really feel these kids. It's great. It's a really solid movie. But yeah, what else is there? Child actors are good. The scares, as far as the scares go in this movie, there's like one scene that legit was like caught me off guard, and that's like the projector scene, which but like other than that, I wasn't like scared by this movie. It definitely gets like violent. It definitely has some really dark themes in it, but it does have heart to it, and it has humor. This is a very funny movie. And not just unintentionally, and like just the over-the-topness of Pennywise, which was a total and complete joy to me. But with the child actors, like the way they interact with each other, the things they say, like Richie Tozier, like the whole time he's just like Mr. Lino-Rama, just saying things, and like every time he says something, he's really funny. And I'm really glad that like it shows like the actor who plays him, who is also in Stranger Things, like showcases a lot of range. And yeah, a lot of great stuff in this movie. I guess we'll get into some. I guess at this point I'll get into spoilers for those of you who kind of want to go into it blind, not knowing much. But yeah, I thought the cast did great. You really felt the emotions here, and like this, like when Bill goes after his brother Georgie, like unlike in the miniseries and the book where George just straight up just dies. This one is like he goes missing, which I like that change too, because it gives you that feeling of like, oh, he just kind of vanished. Like whatever happened to Georgie? You know what I mean? But it's great. You really get the feeling that like he loves his brother, and not that he didn't in the miniseries, but like this drive, it gives Bill more motivation when he's searching for his brother instead of like him just being dead. Well, obviously the motivation is going to be there, but to where like Bill is like going to continue his search and looking to find out what happened to him. I thought that was really good. So yeah, from this point on, I'm going to get into spoilers, but I highly recommend you check out Stephen King's It. It's already making a shit ton of money. I thought it would, back in July when the first trailer or something like dropped, I figured, okay, this movie's going to be the first horror movie to like open to $100 million. And yeah, it's blowing all expectations out the water. I know tracking initially had it at like 50 to 60 million. I'm like, no. Had the biggest trailer launch in history. It's going to crack $100 million opening weekend. So, yeah, and it's doing that. This is great for horror, R-rated, one of the biggest openings ever for an R-rated film. I think second only to Deadpool. But we'll know by the time the weekend's over with to see exactly what the actuals are going to be. But yeah, it exceeded expectations for me. I was a bit concerned. I'm like, because like initially they had this guy Cary Fukunaga who worked on True Detective season 1. I was like, oh, that's a great choice. And he spent years and years working on this movie, and then this movie's been in kind of development hell for a while. And then he left, and I'm like, oh, damn it. I was really looking forward to seeing what he was going to do, because they had, like, Will Poulter as Pennywise. And they brought Andres Muschietti, or whatever. And he had made Mama, which I had seen portions of it. I thought it was fine. It wasn't anything, like, bad. It wasn't anything, like, that great. But it was fine. It was serviceable. But I'm like, oh, he's doing it. Oh, I hope he does a good job. And the directing of this movie is great. The cinematography is really good. The musical score is good as well. It's just an all-around great movie, and I just loved it. I love this movie. I'm going to go see it again for sure. I don't know when that'll be, maybe next week or something like that, but I definitely plan on seeing it again because it was a very satisfying adaptation. So, yeah. Alright, now at this point I'm going to get into spoilers, full-blown spoilers from this point on, so if you want to go watch the rest of the movie, go ahead and do so. I highly recommend you check out Stephen King's It. It is a fantastic adaptation of the first half of King's story. So, yeah. Spoilers now. They do change some things from the book. Now, obviously they changed the time frame of the movie and some of the things that happened to the characters. The best change that they did, obviously, like right away, they got rid of the child orgy scene in the sewer. That in the book, when I was reading it was like in graphic detail. I'm like, I don't know what you were doing. I think in hindsight, King wishes he didn't write that, but yeah, he wouldn't do it today, obviously, but that scene in the book, I was just like, this is not something I like reading, per se. I just thought it was weird. So what did they do? They brought back the leper for Eddie, which was cool. That wasn't in the miniseries. They actually have the house in that, too. They fucking kill Henry Bowers in this movie. It's like fucking Mike just like kicks him, he just like falls down a shaft, and he's just like horrifically like murdered, like straight up, like unless they find a way to keep him alive. But I'm like, he's dead. There is no way in hell you're surviving that fall. You know what I mean? Like, he is dead as can be. And in which case, like, you know, did anyone like? There's some things about this movie I was kind of confused about too. Like at the end of the movie, we go to Pennywise's lair. And everyone's floating, and you actually see the bodies like hovering up. I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. It's like this giant like stack of like stuff that Pennywise has taken from his victims over the years. And I'm like, at the end of the movie, they're like, oh, after Bev was like broken out of her trance, it's never made clear if those kids like, because they were still in the deadlights, if they were ever broken from them. Because they're like, oh, the kids are coming down. I'm like, are they dead? Are they in purgatory? Because like he hasn't eaten them yet. I mean, they're just in the deadlights. I mean, unless he already consumed their fear or something like that. In which case, I'm like, did they ever go to the adults and be like, hey, look, we found all these bodies? Like, it's kind of just like left open. I'm like, did the kids ever just go back to their homes? I would have liked something more clear-cut than that, unless they just die and ascend to somewhere. But, yeah, it's like, they're just never seen. We never find out what happens to them, per se. And I'm like, okay, are they alright? Did they just die? They kind of confused me in the movie. But there are some things, like, for instance, they go into the sewer to save Beverly. That's different. They brought back her creepy father. Well, I mean, they had her creepy father in this one. Some of the dialogue is a bit different. He's like, you're still my little girl. Like, it implies, like, that he's, like, molested her and stuff like that. Like, your father, like, that shit was, like, creepy as hell. And, like, just seeing her beat the shit out of her dad, that was pretty good. A lot of the elements that some of the characteristics of them are a bit different. For instance, Mike Hanlon and Ben Hanscom. Ben Hanscom's the one who's like the history guy, and like he's the one who knows all the history of the town. But like the miniseries, they had it as Mike, who was primarily the guy. But in this one, Mike's kind of the outsider. He lives on a farm by himself. He's shooting animals. He's the one who doesn't come in later on. Mike is the one who kind of gets shafted a bit the most in terms of development. But I think in the sequel they're going to explore more. But it is tough to balance all these characters in the one movie. This is the fastest 2 hours and 15 minutes I've ever sat through in a movie. I honestly wouldn't have minded if the movie went on another like half hour or so, because I was having such a good time with this film. And with all the characters, like, you're never bored. That's what I love about it. Like, some movies, like with a bunch of characters, they really drag down. Even the second half of the miniseries with the adults really drags down. But like this stuff with the kids, it's engaging the entire time. You really like it. And some of my nitpicks too. You don't. I mean, you get the friendship with a lot of the kids, but like I think with it is a bit stronger of a connection. I felt. I felt that they were stronger as a group in the miniseries more so than this movie in some things. I think that a lot of it has to do with the flashbacks working into the plot of the film. And like Mike kind of just like shows up at one point, and then he's like, I mean, they know about Pennywise, but he's not really like in it as much per se. He's not with the group like hanging out and stuff. Like they kind of just like it's like straight up business from that point onward. But I mean, I still liked it. So what I like too is they set up all the kids' fears, and then that plays a factor into to the end of the movie. They don't go cosmic with it, which was something I was curious that they were going to do. They don't have the turtle in the movie per se. I mean, the turtle's like, you see like symbols of the turtle throughout, like when the first scene with Georgie, you see like a turtle silhouette. You see Bill carrying around like a turtle like Lego piece. So yeah, they don't do the ritual in that either. It's just them overcoming their fear, and they just beat the shit out of Pennywise. Like, you really feel for these kids. I love this, watching them just beat the shit out of them at the end of the movie, because in the miniseries, just like, you know, they shoot the rock and like that's not like that's. I understand the meaning behind it. It's like their power, and special bond that they have, but just seeing Pennywise just get his ass handed to him, just being like "fuck you, clown," was great. Scares, that projector scene when he turns into the giant Pennywise, that was the one bit that like threw off guard. I'm like, oh god. The Georgie scene. Definitely, I didn't. In the book, he rips his arm out. This one, his mouth like turned into like a crocodile or something like that, like all his teeth, and he just bites Georgie's arm off. And then like I was like, oh shit, yeah, they went there. And then his giant arm pulls him in, and I'm like, okay. And then he goes in the sewer, and then he's gone. But yeah, like Pennywise, like there's moments where he has like the clown elements, and all of a sudden he's like popcorn, ooh, and he starts laughing, and then he just like snaps back out of it, and he's just drooling, and you're like, oh man, he is salivating at that kid. He wants to consume that kid in his fear. So yeah, and some of the other things they do, like the haunted house bit, was probably like my favorite. My favorite scene in the movie is just that whole haunted house section where they go into the creepy house that looks like straight out of like a Tim Burton movie, and Pennywise, it comes out of the fridge, and like the kids are trying, like Richie goes in like to the room of clowns. You see the Tim Curry clown, which is pretty cool. That was pretty good, because like a lot of it's updated too. Like in the book, for instance, like they come across, like, because since that was the 50s, the kids were afraid of things like the creature from the Black Lagoon, mummies and stuff. But a lot of this one's like more like zombies, grotesque things, because they wouldn't necessarily be scared of those things, like the creature from the Black Lagoon and such nowadays. So they had to update it a bit. The room full of clowns was a nice touch. Like Bill Skarsgård was hilarious as Pennywise the dancing clown in this movie. That's the scene where he's finally let loose, because in the movie, he's not in it enough for me. Like, he's in it maybe like 15 minutes, but like he could have been in the movie a bit more, and he's kind of restrained a bit at certain instances. There's moments where he's allowed to let loose, and for instance, the scene where he's antagonizing Eddie in the kitchen, that's the scene where he's just allowed to just go as fucking apeshit as he wants. And like, I was laughing so hard in the theater, because he's comes out of the fridge and is like contorting his body, and then Eddie's like panicking, he's like making fun of him, and he goes "Blah!" and he's just screaming, and I was laughing my ass off, and he's just like antagonizing him the whole time. He's like, I'm gonna get you, and he's smacking him, like, oh, I'm gonna eat you, and he's just messing with them, and just, he's having the time of his life in this role, you can tell. And it's weird, when you like see the actor, like you would never expect that to come out of that guy, because like the interviews I've seen with Skarsgård, he's like, I wouldn't say, like, he doesn't seem like he's very comfortable like in interviews and stuff. Like, he's like socially like, like he seems like a very like quiet person, but like this is like just him, like all his crazy impulses just let loose for a bit, and he is a ton of fun in this movie. And the part where like Bill and Richie come in, and then Pennywise just turns around, he's like, "This ain't real enough for you, Billy? I'm not real enough." And he starts like sounding like an ex-girlfriend. He's like, what do you mean we're breaking up? And I, it was hilarious. And then just I'm beating the shit out of him was great. Yeah, and then the part where he's dancing too was really funny. He's just when he gets to ham it up, that's what he's at. That's when I enjoyed him the most. That's my favorite in the movie, just him hamming it up. But yeah, and the kids, how they all connect with each other, become good friends, and the special bond that they have. They do the blood oath thing, which is great and all. And the way the movie ends too, like the thing that kind of hit me a bit was when Bill goes and like finds his brother's like rank. Like he has a conversation. Georgie's like obviously I know it's Pennywise, but so they play it off. You're not kind of sure. And like the way he talks to his brother and just like he's like, but you're not my brother. He's like, I'm sorry about what happened to you, Georgie. I wish I could have done something. And the scene where he goes like and just like grabs like the raincoat or whatever, Georgie's raincoat. He's crying over it, and then like that was a touching scene. That was nice. I really liked that bit. And I'm like, you really felt like the love he had for his brother, and like the speech he gives early on in the movie. It was great. Like, just seems like I feel more comfortable in this creepy haunted house than I do in my own house because like my brother's there with all his stuff and that. Like I'm like it's not right, and I'm like, oh, he really does love his brother, and you really get that. Not that you didn't get that in the miniseries, but you really get this more here because you feel a stronger connection between the two of them. So, yeah, child actors in this are all great, and there's some creepy scenes too. I like some of the subtle moments too. For instance, when Ben is in the library or whatever, like he's looking at the book, you see all like the death stuff. Like one of the things that I don't think a lot of people notice is like the librarian in the background just like sitting back there smiling and that, and like it's like kind of out of focus. Like whenever he's reading the book and he's getting like into it, like you just see. I'm like, oh, subtle stuff like that is what I really liked. A lot of scares and gore. Like it was kind of cheesy but hokey, but it was a lot of fun. What else can I say? Some of the creepy townsfolk in this movie though, like when Bev goes to like, you know, distract the pharmacist guy so that they can take stuff for Ben's wounds, because Henry sociopath Bowers is like tried to like fucking murder him. Uh, oh god, like the part where she's like, "Oh, those glasses, you look like Superman." She's like, "Can I try one?" He's like, "Oh, you look like Lois Lane." I'm like, "You creepy child molesting fuck, get out of here, you sick pervert." And but yeah, like nothing really comes of that, but like you get this feeling like, ugh, this guy's a creeper. So like, ugh, you weird old man. Yeah, so that was that. Some of the deaths they change around. For instance, like some of the characters, like Henry's friends, like Belch and that, don't get like much screen time. Patrick, whatever his last name was, why am I drawing a blank? Patrick Hollister? Yeah, Hochstetter, or whatever his last name is, Patrick H. or whatever. His death is changed around. He dies in the sewers, and like Pennywise doesn't. What's weird is like Pennywise sometimes will play with his food and like feed under fear. Like people like Patrick who just kind of stumble upon him and stuff. He just kills them like right off the get go. So that was different. They definitely cut out a lot of the sexual elements between Henry and like Patrick, which not necessarily like needed in this movie and would have taken too long to explore, but like the tension that those two had, and like Henry is just a sociopath in this movie. He just kills his dad at one point. Doesn't even question why a knife just shows up in his mailbox. But like some of the subtle stuff too, I like is on the TV. You're like, oh, let's play in the sewer, kids. This will be great. And then like later on, they showcase it, and like Pennywise is in there. He's like, kill them all, kill them all. And I'm like, is he just not going to talk about the clown, or is the clown's influence just completely consumed Henry? So I thought that was cool. Yeah, Young extra good. Stan was fine. Ben was good. Richie, Bev, Eddie, all of them. Eddie's mom, ooh, well, I'll just say that. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I can say. It's just a great movie. I think everyone will really enjoy it. It's funny as hell, like Ben being a New Kids on the Block fan. And I can't wait for what they do with It Chapter 2. As far as post-credit scenes go, there's nothing. You just hear Pennywise's like ridiculous laughs. And by God, like every time Pennywise is just laughing and just going cackling, like, oh, please, just make the whole movie just this next time, because he was just fucking hilarious. And I just loved every minute of it. He was just such a joy on film. And I'm hoping this means that like we're gonna get some more like good horror films like this, because I feel like horror is like we've been kind of stuck with like the small, really small budget horror movies that have been like effective lately. We've got movies like Get Out, we've got movies like Split, and the Conjuring series has really stepped up its game. But I feel like this one, like, the budget was like, what, $35-40 million? Like, I feel like with this movie being such a huge hit, it's going to make the studios have more faith in horror movies like this and will produce more quality stuff. I hope this leads to more quality horror films with, like, you know, bigger budgets and stuff. And I think that it might lead to that. I think a lot of studios are going to be like, oh, man, you see it? Like, you see we took the time and care with the source material, what we did? What you get a successful movie. People are going to love this movie. This movie's going to have huge legs. And it's great. I'm very curious to know what they're going to do with part 2. Because even when it came to the book, I'll be honest here, I don't like it as much with the adults as the kids. I think everyone's kind of that same boat. Even like when I read the book, it's not necessary. You don't necessarily need the storyline with them as adults. You really don't. If Stephen King just wrote it with them as kids and we just had this one movie, that would have been perfectly fine. And you could have just wrote the stuff with the adults as a sequel, because I don't really feel like it's all that necessary. And I'm hoping that, like, with the Chapter 2, that there's some elements from the miniseries I like that the book didn't necessarily... There's things I like that the miniseries did that weren't necessarily, like, present in the book. For instance, like, Bill has an affair in the book, whereas in the movie, he's still loyal to his wife, although he does make out with Bev right away, which is kind of creepy. That was interesting. And, yeah, that kind of caught me off guard, and I'm like, why are you just, your wife, you have your wife, Bill, but, yeah, it's whatever. But, yeah, I think most people will generally really like this movie. I know it's got strong word of mouth. It's worth checking out. I think you'd really like it. So if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, check it out. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. And, yeah, I'll be back another time to review some more stuff. But in the meantime, watch it. It's fucking incredible. It's one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations now. We'll see what they do with part 2. They're going to go more cosmic. Or chapter 2, as I'm saying. I think they're just going to stick with 2 movies, or maybe they'll do a third one that just goes into Pennywise's full origin. But I'm very curious to know what they do with the chapter 2, because that's always been the weakest part of the story for me, is them coming back as adults. I hope they find a way to make part 2 as good, if not better, than part 1, because part 1 is it's going to be a very tough act for them to follow, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on the adult actors to deliver as well as these kid actors did. Skarsgård will be great regardless, but hopefully he's let loose a bit more in the sequel. We get some even more, like, crazy-ass stuff. I want to see that fucking turtle. I just want to see the turtle in the movie. I think that'd be pretty great. So, yeah, here's hoping that Chapter 2 of It is great. And I hope it's just 2 chapters. As much as I'd love more Pennywise content, I don't want them to stretch it out like they did the fucking Hobbit movies, where it's like 3 movies for a short-ass book. Like, I think the duology, that's the perfect way to go about it. Like, some cases where they split movies into 2, I don't really understand. But with It, it's like the perfect one you have to split it in 2 to tell the full story, because you tell it from the point of view of the adults and the kids. With a movie like, say, I don't know, like the Hunger Games movie, you don't need to split that into 2 parts, or like the Divergent series, you don't need to. Harry Potter, I mean, they were able to adapt those into 1 movies, but I can understand the final one, because they want to kind of like leave you on a high note, which, yeah, it started that stupid trend of splitting books, but I'm like, if you can adapt like the other movies into like other books into 1 movie, you should have just done the last one the same way. But yeah, go check out Stephen King's It. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and we can talk about the movie further. And yeah, nothing else to say, but we all float down here.